Hello, it's me, Guy. In this video, I want to talk about how much time certain features can take to develop and stuff like that, and the philosophies for working on various features. So, in my opinion, there are two ways of making anything with regards to making a game. There's the good enough level of effort, and then there's the perfect level of effort. And there are cases where both have their own time and place. However, good enough generally results in poor quality, but sometimes you have to make that sacrifice to save time for other things. Meanwhile, perfect generally results in high quality, but takes an obscene amount of time to get something to perfection and is therefore not worth it. In my opinion and in my experience, the best compromise you can make is to bring something that you're working on to 90% of what you consider to be perfect and stop. The last 10% are not noticed or appreciated by most people. The only people who are going to notice the last 10% that you spent an obscene amount getting it to perfection are people who are also just as competent as you are in that field. However, the amount of time it takes to get those last 10% is, from my experience, is like way more than the initial 90%. So it's just a time hog and absolutely not worth it. Again, the average person isn't going to notice. Another important thing to consider is that perfection, or whether something is perfect, your understanding of it is dictated by your own skill level. So you could spend a ton of time getting something to what you consider to be perfect, only for it to be not even close to being perfect in 6 months. So it never makes sense to hyperfixate on a single feature when making a game, because as you're working on your own game, you are consistently getting better and better and better at everything pretty much. So by focusing on the 90% of it being perfect, it saves you a lot of time, allows you to iterate on your work over and over again, and therefore you get to bring something that you would have considered 6 months ago to be perfect to a higher level of quality than you would have considered perfect back then. I've talked about this in a different video, but basically the idea is that if you spend 2 months on one feature, 2 months on another feature, and 2 months on another feature, the experience you get from all these 3 different features, they carry over into each other. And then if you go back to working on the first feature that you worked in the beginning and spent only 2 months on, then you get to bring it to a level of quality that's higher than you would have gotten it to if you spent 6 months on that one feature instead. However, what exactly is good enough? Well, in my opinion, it's anywhere between 0 and 100% perfect. But on average, it usually lands somewhere on like 60 to 70%, which is unfortunately not very high quality. If you want something to be good, you have to spend a decent amount of time on it, but not too much for the reasons I mentioned earlier. Again, get things to 90% of what you consider to be perfect, work on other things, and then in due time, when you go back and experience the things that you worked on before, they will not seem as good to you again, and that's your signal that you should work on it some more to get it to a higher level of quality. And if you do that, if you don't hyperfixate on one feature over and over again, hyperfixate on feature A, feature B, feature C, what you're going to get is a very consistent level of quality across the board. Meanwhile, if you spend on feature A 6 months, feature B 6 months, feature C 6 months, right? That's the difference in quality. Whereas if you spend a bit of time on everything, the level of quality is going to be more or less like this, right? A lot more consistent and a lot more appreciated by the average person than if you would get everything to perfection. Thanks for watching. See you next time.